Hi all, I am Rishika Gupta, currently working as a software engineer at LinkedIn. In the last video, we learned about HTML and the different types of tags we use in HTML to define the structure or skeleton of our web pages. We also covered about how the web works and what happens when you hit the URL in your browser. But do you think that is enough to create the front end of your website or the UI, which is user interface of your web pages? Well, the answer is no. To style your website and to make it attractive, for that you have to use styling languages like CSS. CSS is cascading style sheets. Again, do not confuse it with any programming languages. CSS is not a programming language, it is a styling language, and hence it does not have any logic. Here we simply introduce properties like a key value pair, and let's understand this via an example. So as I mentioned, CSS is cascading style sheets. We can even see CSS file in our web browser also. So let's go to again google.com, click on inspect tool, and let's see the different type of CSS properties applied in different elements of this web pages. You can just hover on the element and see the styling applied on this particular element. So here if you see, we have display property represented as block, and the body tag of HTML has this type of CSS properties inside it. I hope now you have understood what is meant by key value pair in CSS. So in this video, we are going to learn more about CSS and a framework which is built upon CSS, which is Bootstrap. It is an open source framework and very easy to use. So again, this video is going to be very beginner friendly and with the assumption that you have no idea about CSS, and in this video you are going to write your very first code in CSS. So get your laptops ready and let's start with the first topic. Now first you have to define your index.html file, and using that HTML file we are going to apply CSS on it. So first I am going to create a doc type HTML which will define that the type of this document is HTML5. Now I will create the HTML tag, and inside it I will create a body tag. Now in the body I can have some headings or paragraphs. So let's say I am creating a paragraph, hey there. Save this file and load it on Chrome. So for that you can reveal it in Finder and then open it with Chrome. So here as you can see we have hey there written, but currently there is no CSS or styling applied on this text. So in this video we are going to check how we are going to apply CSS on a particular file. So in this video we are going to see how we can apply CSS or styling to our web elements. So first I am going to create a file with the extension CSS. The name of the file can be anything, but I am writing style.css. Again, this is by convention that for the landing page of your website, the corresponding CSS can be index.css or style.css if you are writing all the CSS of your web pages together. So here the syntax goes like this. First we are going to have a selector, and then under curly braces you can define your key value pairs, where key represents the property of CSS and value is the corresponding value. So it goes like this. And if you want to define multiple properties within one curly brace, then you can just separate them with a semicolon. So let's say this is key1 and the corresponding value is v1, and let's say we want to add another key, so we can add it like this. So this is pretty simple syntax of CSS. Now the question arises, what are these selectors and how do we know what are the key value pairs which are available in CSS? So let's see how. But even before that, we have to first learn how to add CSS in your HTML file. So there are three ways to add CSS in your HTML document. First is the inline way. So I am just going to write it here. First is the inline way. Second is internally adding CSS to your HTML file. And the third one is to add externally CSS file to your HTML file. So here we are first going to learn about inline CSS. For inline CSS, you are going to use the style attributes of HTML elements. So here I can write style equal, and in the double quotes I can define the properties of CSS. So for example, let's say if I want to change the color of this text, then I can simply write color followed by colon, and let's say I want to change it to blue. Now save this file and reload your page. Here you can see the color of your text is changed now. And it is pretty simple to add inline CSS because here we want exactly which element we are going to change using our CSS. But it's not a very conventional or good way to add CSS using inline styling, because as you can see, we are not going to separate the HTML and CSS file. So the code can become huge and difficult to understand. The second reason can be, if I want to apply the same styling to, let's say, different element, then I have to rewrite the code again, and it will cause duplication of my code. The second way is to add your CSS internally in your HTML file. For that, you can use the style tag. And as we are using CSS in our HTML itself, and it's not something that we want to showcase on our web page, hence we want to define it in the head tag itself. So I am going to write head here, and inside head I am going to write style. Now everything that I write in style is going to be act as the CSS file for this HTML document. So here I am going to apply the similar properties which I applied on line number 9. So let me just copy this code and write it inside the style tag. So it's color colon blue. But now the question arises, I want to apply this styling specific to this paragraph tag. How to select this paragraph tag? Now it can be done using selectors. We have different types of selectors in CSS, and in this video we are going to learn about 3 selectors primarily: the select by ID, select by name, and select by classes. Although let's first discuss about briefly all type of selectors which we have in CSS. The first type of selectors are simple selectors. In simple selectors, we have select by class, select by ID, and select by name. So here name we already know is the tag name, like P is a tag name for paragraph here. So I can select my styling using tag name. Let's try this. So I am going to write P, and just in double quotes I am going to define this style. So now as you can see, the styling is applied on the element. So first let me just remove this inline code so that we can test if our internal CSS is working or not. And let's just comment out this code, save the file and refresh our page. As you can see, the color of the text is still blue. To test this more firmly, we can change the color. Let me just try green now. Save this file and refresh your page. So now as you can see, the color of your text is green. So that means your internal CSS is also working fine. But now let's see the other type of selectors we have in CSS. So right now we have selected our element by tag name, but we can also select our element using classes and ID. Now let's see what are classes. So classes are the property using which we can classify the elements of HTML. So let's say if I define a property here, class P1, and if I want to apply the same styling on a different paragraph with the same class, so I am going to write class as P1 here. So P1, and here I am going to write a different text. So hello. Save this file, and now let's see the text of both the paragraphs. Now as you can see, the color of both the paragraphs are green right now, but that is because we have still identified paragraphs for the selector. Let's change it to P1, save our file, and let's see what happens. Now as you can see, the color is black again. Why so? Because we have mentioned P1 here, but without saying that P1 is not a tag, but it is a class. So to distinguish between the class by ID, name and tag, we have different ways to showcase them. So for classes, I am going to use dot here, and as you can see, VS Code is already suggesting me the corresponding class. So I am just going to save this document, and reload the page. And now as you can see, the text of these paragraphs are again green, and both the text are green. That means we are able to select our elements based on classes. Now the third simple selector is select by ID. So let's create another paragraph here and add an attribute of ID. Now I can mention ID 1 here, and let's see what happens. I can just write hello there again, and let's see if we are going to apply the same CSS using dot operator. So I'm going to write ID 1 here, and as you can see, the VS Code is not suggesting me any class. So the ID can be selected using hash. Now I can write ID 1 here and the corresponding properties inside curly braces. So again, let's define the color property, and let's define red color here for our third paragraph. Save this file and see the changes. Here as you can see, the third paragraph is in red color now. So we have tested select by ID as well. So till now we have covered about simple selectors. The next type of selectors we have are combinator selectors. In this type of selectors, we are going to use the relationship between different elements of HTML. For example, these paragraphs are child element of our body element, right? So here we are going to select these paragraphs based on the relationship they have with our body element. Third type of selector we have are pseudo class selector. Pseudo class selector are used to select element based on their classes which are temporary. For example, you must have seen in many websites when you hover on a button, the CSS of that button or styling of that button changes. The color of the button sometimes change, and even the size of the button sometimes change on the website. So that is because we have applied specifically on the state of the button, which is hover in this case. So that was pseudo class selectors. The next we have our pseudo element selector. Here we are going to select the element only in the cases when we want to apply CSS on some part of the element. For example, let's say if I want to apply CSS only on the first letter of this complete sentence, then I can use pseudo element selectors. And lastly, we have attribute selectors which select HTML elements based on the attributes that we define inside the opening tag. For example, if you want to apply CSS based on the target attribute of anchor tag, then you can use attribute selectors. So we were discussing about how to add CSS to your HTML documents, and we covered about inline styling and how to add internal CSS inside the HTML document itself. So next we are going to learn about how to add CSS style externally. So let me just clear this out. And for adding CSS externally, we are going to add it in the link tab. So let's see how we can add CSS externally. Also, let me just remove this style tag as well. And now we are going to use the link tag. Link tag is defined in HTML itself. It is used to add links in our head tag itself, where we can refer the CSS style files or JavaScript file that we want to use in our HTML document. So here we have attributes like rel, which shows the relationship of this file with our browser. So as we are going to add a style sheet here, hence with the rel attribute we are going to mention style sheet as the value. After that, to add the link of your style sheet, you are going to use the href attribute. Here you can refer the link or the source path of your style sheet. So I am going to write style.css. Now that's how you can add your CSS file externally. So whatever now you add here will be added in your HTML file. Let's try this. So I am going to write P and then color as green. So again I am going to select attributes based on their tag name. And now just save both the files and refresh our page. Here as you can see, all the three paragraphs are green now. So that's how you can add your CSS to HTML file with either of the three ways. Now let's see how we can comment out code in CSS. So for that I am going to add another property. Let's say I am adding text align property to center. First let's see what this property does. So I'm going to refresh my page, and as you can see, all the text are aligned at the center of the page. So now let's try to use commenting out of code. So for that I am using a shortcut of command and /. Now as you can see, this code is comment out and will not be processed by our browser. But you can also manually add these symbols around the code which you want to comment out. Now let's see how our page looks. So as you can see, the property of color is gone now. The next topic that we are going to cover is CSS box model. The model helps us to understand the structure of HTML elements better, like how much area of the total element is used by the content and how much area is used by other things like margin, border or padding. So as mentioned, we have different parts of the box model like content padding, border and margin. Where the content refers to the portion where actual content will be shown, the padding is the area around the content, above padding we have border and above border we have margin. You can see the CSS box model visually also in the Google Inspect tool. You can see this CSS box model visually also using Google Inspect tool. All you need to do is right click on the page, go to Inspect tool and then click on any element on which you want to see the CSS properties applied on that particular element. So here as you can see, color is marked as false. I can tick mark as green also, so that will change the color of the elements. So now you also can define new properties here. Let me define padding property and let me add some pixels here. So as you can see, now the alignment or the padding of these elements are changed. You can even change the CSS properties of these elements just for testing purpose here. Just a note that this will not change any property in your actual CSS file, but just to test you can write some CSS here as well. For example, I have defined padding property. Similarly, I can define the margin and border property as well. And as you can see, we have a box model visualization here as well. And hovering on different elements of our box model, I can see the type and width this model is taking. For example, margin is taking 16th width and border is taking nil, and hence there is no highlighting for border. Padding is taking 10 as we have mentioned in the CSS also, and finally in the content box, this is the width and height that we are taking. So that's how you can visualize your CSS box model. Now that's the brief about CSS, and we are all set to learn about Bootstrap now. Now Bootstrap is an open source CSS framework which helps us to design a website very simply in just few lines of code. So let's just go to the official website of Bootstrap. You can directly search Bootstrap on Google and the first link will be most probably the official website of Bootstrap. So as you can see, this is the official website of Bootstrap, and here if you click on official documentation of Bootstrap, you will get all the information which can help you to get started with Bootstrap. So here as you can see, we have a quick start documentation with step-wise method of how you can add Bootstrap to your HTML files. So the first step is create a new index.html file which we have already created. Now in the second step, we have a step to add link in the head tag. We can add a link like this in the head tag. So let me just copy paste this link and I am going to add this link in my HTML file. So here let's do that. I am going to remove this line, our custom CSS file, and add the Bootstrap CSS. Now to test this, I am going to add an anchor tag with the reference of google.com. So let me just copy paste this URL, add it in the href attribute of anchor tag and right click here. Now to add the CSS classes, I am just going to add a class of button which is defined in Bootstrap. Now save your document and let's see the result. I am going to load this page, and as you can see here we have an anchor tag. So as you can see, when I am hovering on this anchor tag, the type of my cursor is changing because this style is defined in the Bootstrap CSS. We can also see in the inspect tool what all CSS properties are defined for this particular element. So let's try this. So I just hover on the element, and as you can see, we have all these properties defined for the btn class. We can also try adding colors to this btn by adding multiple classes for the same element. So let's try this. Now I am going to add a class btn primary. Save this file and let's see the results. I am going to reload the page, and now as you can see, the button CSS is changed and the color of the button is blue now. You can experiment with Bootstrap and play with it accordingly. Now I hope you understood how we can use Bootstrap in our HTML files. So let's learn more about Bootstrap. The first thing that we are going to learn about Bootstrap is the container classes. Container is a very simple class which is used to wrap the content in your web page. Let me define a div and use the class container to it. So I am going to add a container class here in the div element. So first I have defined the div, and inside the div you can add some paragraphs or headings. So let's say I am writing hello. You can write anything here, and let's define another element, let's say heading 2, and I am writing heading 2 here. Now these two tags are defined under div element. So these two are actually the child elements of our div element. Now I am going to add a class container to this div. You can simply write container in the class attribute. So container here, let's save this file and let's see the difference. So here as you can see, we have some alignment differences for these two elements and the other elements which we have on the UI. So that is because of the container class. Now we have different type of container classes. Another class that we have is the container fluid classes. Now let's see the difference between container and container fluid. So if you see, the width of the container fluid class is 100%, while the width of the container class is little less than that. So you can choose accordingly the type of design you want to have for your web page, and based on that you can choose your container class. After that, once you have defined your container, all the things that you want to showcase on your web page can reside inside the container class. So I am just going to copy this code and paste it in the container class. Now let's refresh our page, and here as you can see, now everything is inside the same div, and I like container class more, so I am just going to change it with container, and now we have this style here. So that's about the container class, but we have a lot more in Bootstrap, and as you can see on the official website, these are all the layouts and content available. Now this is the beauty of open source programs or open source projects. So the documentation is really good for Bootstrap. You can even see we have layouts, content, form and different elements which we can define in our HTML and style using Bootstrap. And one good thing about Bootstrap is it helps to make your website responsive. Making your website responsive refers to that it doesn't depend on the size of the screen. In every size of the screen, your website will look good without any break. So let's see how. If you click on the inspect tool, you can change the size of this website. Now let me change the size as a mobile screen. Here you can see everything is in place, which means that this website is responsive. Even if I change the size of the screen, the website will look good without any breaks. So as you can see, every element in this web page is adjusting itself based on the size of the screen. So Bootstrap helps us to make a responsive website with very less amount of code. Now let's see how. We can do this using breakpoints. So breakpoints help us to decide whether we want to divide our website. So for example, for extra small screen, we can define the behavior of our website, and similarly for other type of screens as well. And that can be done using grid system. So let's just add a row here. For that I am going to add a div, and I am going to add a class of row here. So you can type row, and that will simply add a row into your HTML document. Now inside a row, you can define any number of columns. So let's say I am defining again a div, and I am giving a class of column here now. So class col, which refers to column, and here I can write, let's say this is column 1. I am going to copy paste this code to create some more columns. So let's say I am defining 3 columns right now. So I am going to copy this column and paste it twice in the same row. So this will create 3 columns in the same row with same size. Let's see how. So let's refresh our page, and as you can see, all the 3 columns are adjusted based on equal size. So because we haven't defined any kind of breakpoint here, although we can define how much width a column should take. For example, this complete row has a size of 12. Now I can define the first column should take 3, the second column should take 2. If I refresh the page, I can see the difference that the first column is taking 3 width and the second column is taking 2, and the rest is taken by the third column. So that is the grid system. Now you can even see these properties inside your inspect tool again, and you can even see that the site is responsive. So as you can see, using different attributes of grid system, we can make our website responsive as well by defining proper breakpoints. So for the first example, we have all the columns with equal width. But if you go little down, you can see we have a lot of grid options which we can use to define our breakpoints. For example, for extra small screen, for medium screen, large, extra large and extra large screens, we can define our breakpoints, and accordingly our grid system will work. Now let's see how to use components which are defined in Bootstrap. So let's see how we can add cards which are already defined in Bootstrap. For that, the defined classes are like cards for the complete card div, card body to describe the body of your card, and some other classes like card title and text. So let me just clear this code and create a new div in my container class, and this time I am going to add a class of card here. So just write class, and in this I can write card. So for that I have just defined a card div, and inside this div I can define other divs like card body, card title, etc. So now I am going to define the body of my card. So again create a new div which is like the child div of my parent class, and here I can write class as card body. So just like that. Now inside this you can add properties like images, text and other variables. So first I am going to add an image in my card body. So again you can either create a div or you can directly add image. So I am going to add directly an image here. The source of this image is going to be, so I have many images already saved here. So I am going to write image and then slash, and as you can see VS Code is already suggesting me these options. So I am going to add image2, let's say, and the class of this image tag can be card image, or you can also search which class you want to apply using the references which are given in this blog. So in the blog we have a class card image top written. So I am going to add the same class in my file as well. So here I can just copy paste the name of the class, or you can even type as well. So card image and top. Now let's add the card title as well. I am going to create a new div with a class as card title, and in the title you can write anything. I am writing hi there. Now save this file and see the response. I am going to load my page again and let's see the response. As you can see, I have a CSS with a card tab with the image that I have just added and the card title as hi there. So that's how you can add Bootstrap card CSS to your HTML cards. Now similarly we have other components as well like carousel, collapse, navbar, list, drop downs and whatnot, and it's just a matter which class you are applying to which div, and the whole CSS will be taken care of by the Bootstrap itself. Isn't it that easy? You can play with Bootstrap and let me know in the comment section if you find anything attractive or if you build anything useful. Now I want to show you one very interesting thing. Let me add an anchor tag here and add a class of button. So I am going to add a class of btn and then btn primary. So that I will add a primary color to this particular anchor tag. And let's add click here as the content. Save this file and see our html.index file. Now I have a click here button and the color of this button is green right now. But let me say if I want to add another CSS file with class of button secondary. Now here the anchor tag has all the three classes btn, btn primary and btn secondary. Now let's see what would be the final result of our button. Let me refresh this page and as you can see we have click here as green in color because that is the color of btn secondary class. Now if you inspect the tool you can see all the CSS which is applied on the element. So let me just see the full page view and drag it little up and here you can hover on the element and here if you see the color is applied through btn secondary class and all the colors which are applied through btn primary class are crossed now. Now that is because of the order it has been defined in the Bootstrap CSS file. The last CSS which has been applied on the class will be applied on the element. So sometimes it creates little confusion about what classes and properties are applied on the specific element because we have added too much of Bootstrap classes in the same element. So that's a heads up for you and you can now start playing with Bootstrap. You can even add multiple classes to a single element and see it yourself which class is defined later in the Bootstrap library. So that's the end of today's video. In this video, we covered a lot about CSS and Bootstrap. We covered how to add CSS to your HTML file in different ways like inline CSS, internally and externally adding CSS to your HTML file. After that, we also covered about different types of selectors that we have in CSS. So if you want to learn more about this topic and CSS flag boxes, then you can take our free masterclass on the same topic. If you like this video, give this video a like and if you are new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe us. See you next time.